Speaker, I rise to oppose the Correctional Services Legislation Amendment Bill that will allow untrained probationary correction officers to work in our prisons. In the very brief time that's been available to me to try and understand this bill, it appears to me that it's an utterly reckless proposal that will only serve to undermine the safety and security of our prisons and, more importantly, our whole community. Madam Speaker, this bill is being rushed through with urgency, bypassing the usual scrutiny and debate. There's a crucial distinction we must make in this House between addressing urgent issues and pushing motions through on urgency. Yes, the issues we face in our prison system are absolutely urgent, and it's our duty to confront them with the seriousness they deserve. But, Madam Speaker, the concept of urgency should never be confused with rushing decisions. Moving motions through on urgency means bypassing the critical processes that ensure that the laws we pass are well considered, effective, and in the best interests of our people. Urgency should not be about cutting corners or circumventing proper deliberation. When we do that, we risk making decisions that may have unintended or foreseeable negative consequences, or worse, laws that really fail to address the root causes of our issues. We know that addressing issues requires time, consultation with experts, careful evaluation of the potential impacts of our decisions, and this is not something we can afford to rush. Madam Speaker, we're expected to make a critical decision about the safety of our prison system today, yet we're not being given the time or opportunity to properly evaluate its potential consequences. The government is presenting this as part of a corrections master plan, but make no mistake, there is no real plan here. What we are seeing is a hasty attempt to patch over a system in crisis without addressing the root causes of the problems that we face. As the Minister said this morning, the prison system in the Northern Territory is in crisis. Overcrowding, understaffing and inadequate facilities have led to a situation where prisoners are being held in conditions that are unfit for human beings. Reports indicate that up to 18 individuals are being held in police watch houses, using makeshift cells that do not even meet the basic requirements for humane detention. Yet, instead of addressing these critical issues, the government's response is to introduce untrained corrections officers into the system. This is not a solution, it's an unsafe gamble. By allowing probationary officers with no proper training to be deployed in prisons, the government is creating a situation where both inmates and staff are at greater risk. Madam Speaker, this bill is one of the broadest pieces of legislation that I have ever seen, and I note again that I saw this bill for the first time yesterday morning. In the totally inadequate time that has been available, I make the following comments. Under this bill, it is entirely the discretion of the Commissioner to allow private security guards with no minimum qualifications to work in our prison systems. It is entirely the discretion of the Commissioner whether or not they appoint a person. They must be satisfied that this person has the qualifications, skills or experience, but this is a subjective assessment by one person. There is no preset standard that the Commissioner needs to apply. There is no transparency about how the appropriate qualifications will be determined. Madam Speaker, the Minister has said that these officers will be providing a taxi service, but in fact there is no limit on what they will be doing. Private contractors will be able to hold any correctional officer role in the system, including parole officers in the community. In fact, under this bill, there are huge powers bestowed on these untrained private contractors. The Commissioner can exempt special probationary officers from critical requirements concerning the use of force. This exemption could lead to a situation where there are no meaningful protections in place for prisoners regarding humane treatment, effectively undermining basic safety, principles of dignity and respect, including the use of physical force, restraints and weapons. We cannot take this lightly. It appears that the contractors will have all of the powers but none of the accountability of normal corrections officers. Private providers are not subject to the same transparency and accountable mechanisms as government departments. How will we be keeping these people accountable? I'm concerned that this could open the door to serious human rights violations, as it will allow people in these positions of authority to make arbitrary decisions that will directly impact the well-being and safety of incarcerated individuals. And, Madam Speaker, there is no clarity on how complaints can be made about these correctional officers. This is highly alarming. We know that the union representing these workers has not been consulted, And we know that these workers are deeply concerned about the risk this creates for themselves and the prisoners they are responsible for. We know that they are so concerned that they came here to Parliament House because the Minister had not come to them. Untrained officers simply cannot be expected to manage the complexities of prison life, which include de-escalating volatile situations, identifying mental health concerns, and enforcing regulations that ensure safety for everyone. This proposal is not a reform. It's a cost-cutting measure that puts everyone at risk and will ultimately make our prisons and our whole community less, not more secure. What's even more concerning, Madam Speaker, is the utter lack of a real comprehensive plan. The so-called Corrections Master Plan seems to be nothing more than a set of half-baked proposals that fail to address the core issues facing our correction system. We need a proper strategy to tackle overcrowding, improve prison conditions and address the severe staff shortages. What we don't need is legislation that dilutes training standards and puts unqualified individuals into an already volatile environment. The government's approach shows a fundamental failure to recognise that prisons are not just places for punishment, they are also places for rehabilitation. The role of a corrections officer is not just to manage security, but to help facilitate rehabilitation, maintain order and ensure that individuals who are incarcerated are treated humanely. Madam Speaker, if we are serious about addressing the root causes of crime and improving community safety, as I have heard the CLP say, which I welcome, but then we need well-trained professionals, not an influx of unqualified individuals who have not been adequately prepared for the challenges that they will face. We must consider the consequences of this decision carefully. In an environment as fraught with tension and risk as a prison, the presence of untrained officers will only escalate the potential for violence, both towards inmates and towards other staff members. The chaos and potential for harm that this move will introduce cannot be understated. We know that this is a system that already struggles with overcrowding and insufficient resources. Moreover, this move undermines the professionalism of correction officers, devaluing the important work they do, and like others in this chamber, I want to express my great appreciation for the work that our hardworking correction staff do. I recognise that they are completely stretched and that whatever we can do to support them is something that we need to be doing. Corrections officers are not simply security guards. They are trained professionals who play a vital role in looking after the people who are in our care. This bill will strip away the standards that ensure corrections officers are equipped to carry out this difficult and often dangerous work. Madam Speaker, this bill is not a solution to the crisis.
Deputy Speaker.
Oh, sorry. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sleight of hand. This bill is not a solution to the crisis in our corrections system. It's a hasty, dangerous shortcut that risks the safety of everyone involved, staff, inmates and the public. The lack of a real plan from the government is clear. If we were truly serious about addressing the issues in NT corrections, we would be focusing on meaningful reform, improving training, addressing overcrowding, ensuring humane conditions and creating pathways for rehabilitation. I urge this Assembly to reject this bill and to demand a comprehensive, thoughtful approach to corrections reform, one that prioritises the safety of everyone, those locked up in our prison system, those who work in our prison system and our whole community. We cannot afford to rush this through without considering the consequences. Thank you. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, the member for Mulka is unable to speak to this bill this afternoon, so he has asked that I read some of his speech into the chamber this afternoon. So on behalf of the member for Mulka. This bill places a lot of pressure and responsibility on the Corrections Commissioner, and it essentially gives one person the power to make decisions about what training a corrections, probation and a parole officer can have in the workplace. And I don't believe this is good enough. Corrections officers hold a lot of power in their positions. They are allowed to use physical force, use restraints and use weapons. There should be clear requirements in these roles for the training and qualifications that people hold. There should be clear requirements for working with people who have mental health issues, FASD and other issues. There should be cross-cultural training given. Much of the prisoner population are First Nations people from many different cultures, and the majority of prisoners may speak an Aboriginal language as their first language. There should be de-escalation training and harmony training. And I believe that the current corrections officers are expected to have a Certificate 3 or 4 in correctional services. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am very worried about the conditions of the corrections facilities at the moment. We are hearing very terrible things for people who are being held for months in watch houses where they cannot leave their cell. They are not allowed outside in the fresh air. The NT News reported the stories from Alice Springs where the women were fed 3 Weet-Bix and 6 sugars to be mixed with water from the tap above the cistern on the toilet, a toilet that was being used by 20 people and could hardly be clean. The conditions that we are hearing about are human rights abuses. The Chief Minister said in the media last week, we won't be putting in air conditioning or making it a luxurious destination. Mr. Deputy Speaker, no one expects a luxurious destination, but we expect it to be humane, and when 20 people are stuck in a cell together during rolling lockdowns and during heat waves, I do expect that there will be some relief from the heat. I do expect, as the Ombudsman recommended in 2022, that there should be air conditioning provided in cells. Madam Speaker, the Chief Minister also said, this is a prison for people who have done the wrong thing. But that is not correct. The answers from written questions 40 show that almost 50% of people being detained on remand are being detained on remand awaiting their court hearings. They have not been convicted of a crime. They are waiting for over 6 months in very poor conditions to have their case heard, and at that point their case may be thrown out or they may be found not guilty. Or even if they are found guilty, they may have exceeded the time in jail that they would be sentenced for. And written question 40 also states that 89% of people in prison on the 8th of January were Aboriginal people. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the members of government need to know that not since the federal intervention have we seen such poor laws and policies for Aboriginal people. The crime you see on our streets right now are the children of the intervention. We want to see a pathway that leads them out of the darkness that the intervention brought. A movement towards self-determination, a pathway that gives them hope so that they can find out who they really are and become that person. But instead, with the current government policies, they will become the incarcerated generation. And I note that today it is Sorry Day, a day when we remember the stolen generation. We remember the damage that was done to First Nations people by the government policy of child removal. And I ask, what will this government be known for? What will their legacy be? Will it be equally as racist and inhumane as the stolen generation legacy? Or will we see a legacy of partnership and respect for self-determination, a pathway that brings hope for our future? We want to work together. This is what treaty is all about. It is a diplomatic space where we can make a plan for the future together. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the standards and conditions of the jails are in decline and it is a human rights abuse. This law will also allow for a further decline in conditions for detainees and for workers. It opens the potential to have poorly trained officers in the facilities. This is unsafe for the current employees and it is unsafe for the detainees. It also creates questions around where will the Commissioner find these special new officers? What will the cost of these special officers be? How are they held accountable? If they are not NT government employees, what is the discipline process? And what is the complaint process against a special officer? None of these questions have been answered and it sounds like these things are being made up on the spot. This government has created a crisis. They are blaming the former government, and I agree that all former governments have contributed to this problem. But right now, this government hold all the power. They have all the decision-making power and resources to improve the current situation. Madam Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I would like to see more effort being put into alternative programs to prisons, more effort in programs on country, more effort in rehabilitation. I'm not saying there should be no consequences for unlawful behaviour. I come from a culture that holds the Makarrata ceremony to ensure there is justice when an individual and the community have been wronged. So I believe in holding people accountable, but I don't think this government is getting it right. Many of the current detainees could be diverted to programs that would help them and that would immediately take the pressure off the correction system. The current situation of jailing everyone in very poor conditions will not bring good outcomes for the community. I urge the government to rethink the way they are approaching the problems that our community face. Employ qualified program workers, employ community peacekeepers, employ community mediators, employ social workers and caseworkers instead of correctional officers. Put resources into remote communities, help elders and leaders to restore rapery, education programs, resource healing camps for people with addictions, resource housing in homelands, work with us for community-based solutions, and this crisis will be alleviated. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I would also like to comment on the Minister's comments this week. He said, if you don't want to go to jail, don't commit the crime. It's pretty simple. Minister, it's very easy for members of Parliament to say things like that, but until you address the underlying issues that lead to crime such as poverty and inequity and the real issues that we have experienced through ongoing government interventions that have ongoing impact on our people, I think we can say it's actually not simple. This government doesn't want to recognise systemic racism, but it's there. There in what is said in this chamber and there in the real world about what is really experienced. When the elders and leaders of our community are disempowered in an ongoing way and our people see this every day, there are side effects. How many elders said, yes please, please bring truancy officers to our communities, please bring people who don't speak our language or understand our culture to hand out fines. What elders are really saying is, come sit with us, let's work out these problems together. But we have to weather wave after wave of government that says, we know what is right for you. And most often, these waves of policies are very damaging. Many people have become lost and turned to drugs, gambling, and other issues. There are also many of us who try, despite the poverty and disempowerment, to lead our people. We try to stand up every day and encourage our people to be strong yolngu, to maintain self-discipline, to be proud. But sadly, many people who have lost hope and they don't know what to do. This government needs to understand we have done all the work. I speak English fluently and I have come to government to work with you. But what have you done? Do you speak a First Nations language? Have you come to understand our law and culture? The process of jailing Aboriginal people is not pretty simple. It is a very complicated issue because there are many layers that need to be looked at carefully so that we can truly fix crime by fixing the underlying issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Member.